day, mature designers. Today we will be talking about UX design, a stepped process. So UX design is definitely a stepped process and it has a defined flow. If you are following that process, then you are able to reach the right goal and the right solution. So let's get started and understand what are the processes involved in this stepped process. So first of all is understand. What to understand? The understanding of your stakeholders, the understanding of the value proposition mapping and what the product goals and what are the business goals. These things we need to understand initially as UX designers to understand what we are going to building, to know the stakeholders who are making you build a product and to understand their vision is the first and foremost thing that we need to understand before start designing. After that, we need to move on to the second step, that is research. After understanding what we need to build, what are the project goals, what are the product goals, after that we need to do some research for that. And in research, we are to do individual interviews, but it might be that the product is new and it has not been launched in the market. Then how are we there to interview individuals? So in this case, you need to do competitive research. Also, you can do competitive research when your product is already there in the market, but you cannot do individual interview at that time. So I want to mention a very important thing is that whatever I am mentioning, all these methods, all the four methods that you can see over here, you need not follow all the methods. You have to follow only methods that are required. So after individual interviews, you might or you want to do that competitive research. In competitive research, you compare similar products or that are your direct competition or indirect competitions. Then comes the market research and mapping. After that, we are doing analysis. So after research, we are there to do analysis. We have to analyze what we have researched, of course. After research, then we are to make user personas and we need to form our ideal users who we are going to design for. And then we have to create user stories and storyboarding. But all these three are not necessary to be done. We have to do only those things that are necessary, not everything that are mentioned in a UX process. So you want to create storyboarding. If that makes your work easier, if that makes you find your solution faster and easier, then you can do it, but it's not compulsory to do each and everything. So you do the stories and the storyboarding. After analysis, after research and analysis of your users, then you are to do define and ideate. So now you have to do defining and ideation of your product. Now this is the most important part, so it definitely deserves a drum roll. So we have to move on to this part where we actually start, molding our product. So here we are to each and everything. So thinking about how might we, which will help us define our problem statement. Then we have to do brainstorming and ideation to actually come on to solutions for those problem statements. And then we can do card sorting and other methods to define our information architecture, which will be our framework for the product that we will be building, and then task flows and user flows, which will help us further modify our designs. And after defining and ideating comes the part where we are very excited to do the design and prototype part. So the design and prototype is having too many methods like lo-fi or hi-fi and other things, but there's one important thing that you have to do the prototype first. You have to use the wireframe in prototyping and then test it before doing your hi-fi designs, because you have to make changes after testing. So then first, after making the sketches or lo-fi sketches in pen and paper, then you create wireframes and you do prototyping and then you test it on our users. And after testing on your users, then you build a design system and branding. And along with that, when your users testing is done, then you are there to modify your wireframe, modify your information architecture, and then again, after when you are showing the final thing to your stakeholders, when they are satisfied, then you are to do your hi-fi designing. After hi-fi designing, then again share it with your stakeholders, and you can again do a proper user testing, and then you can move on. So testing is something which does not always comes after design and prototype, but basically it comes in the way. So after design prototype and testing, what you can do is that you can do surveys, you can do you can see your analytics, you can do user testing, affinity mapping, Guerrilla testing, tree testing. There are so many methods of testing, phone interviews, recorded sessions, which will help you in all the ways in testing your product. So after doing these testing process, you are there to do iteration. Iteration is something which comes at your various steps during your product. So whenever you are testing your product, you get some feedback. Then after you get the feedback, you again make changes according to those feedbacks. You need not incorporate every feedback, but you have to make changes. After making the changes, you again test it on your user and again iterate. So these process just keeps on going just like this. So this is how you do UX process, and this was the flow of UX process and how you can reach to your solution correctly. If you liked it, please like the video and subscribe the channel. Thank you.